You have come here tonight with a question not of the intellect, but of the soul. A question hidden beneath the folds of your frustration, masked behind your annoyance at others. Perhaps you have wondered why certain people, and only certain people, have the power to disturb the peace you've tried so hard to construct. Why, despite all your effort to be rational, balanced, even spiritual, someone's presence, a few words or a gesture can ignite a silent fury within you, and perhaps you've even been ashamed of it. But I tell you this, what irritates you is not arbitrary. It is a signal, a mirror, a sacred code. I have spent a lifetime peering into the dreams of humanity and the dungeons of the unconscious. And if there is one truth I return to again and again, it is this: the other is never just the other. The face you see in your adversary is but a projection, a canvas upon which your psyche paints the unresolved, the rejected, the repressed. You must understand the psyche is a vast realm, a house with many rooms, most of which you have not dared to enter. And when you close the door on one of these rooms, the contents do not disappear. No, they wait. They wait in the dark, alive and autonomous. And when the right person arrives, the one with the tone of voice, the confidence, the arrogance, the beauty, the chaos, they awaken something buried. That something is what we call a complex, a charged cluster of emotion, memory, energy, psychic content that split from the conscious self like a splintered bone, too painful to bear. These complexes roam the unconscious with their own logic, their own voice. And when they are touched even slightly, you erupt, you flinch, you blame, you withdraw. You label the other as irritating, toxic, difficult. But really, what you feel is your own wound, bleeding again. Let me speak more plainly. When someone irritates you, they are holding up a mirror that reflects an inner figure you have not yet faced. The mother who smothered you, the father who abandoned you, the sibling who outshone you, or perhaps even more subtle, the parts of yourself you've banished to maintain your image of being good, agreeable, superior, spiritual, yes, especially spiritual. Many who walk the path of consciousness fall into a seductive trap, the belief that light alone will save them, that if they meditate long enough, read enough, pray enough, they will be liberated from anger, jealousy, pettiness. But these traits are not demons to be cast out. They are orphans, children of your soul, crying for your recognition. When you reject them, they do not die. They merely change form. They project outward. You see them in others, and you fight them there because you dare not face them within. And so irritation becomes a guide, a flare from the deep, a call from the underworld asking you to come down and reclaim what you have lost. You see, there is no real boundary between you and the world. The psychic skin is porous. The unconscious does not distinguish between self and other. It speaks in symbols, in images, in dreams. And when you are awake but unaware, your life becomes your dream. Acted out in daylight, without your consent, you are possessed not by spirits of myth, but by psychic fragments begging for redemption. Let me tell you a dream. From a patient I once had, in it, she walked through a forest and came upon a woman with a scarred face who screamed obscenities at her. The dreamer recoiled, horrified. She was disgusting. She told me, monstrous. But I asked her, what did she remind you of? And after some silence, she whispered, she was like my mother. The mother I never dared hate. The mother I tried so hard to forgive, to understand. But in the dream, I felt a raw rage I never allowed myself in waking life. You see, the scarred woman was not her mother, nor was she only a figment of imagination. She was a container, a symbol, holding the unprocessed grief, resentment, and pain the dreamer had disowned in order to be a good daughter. And when the psyche cannot speak directly, it speaks in images in the waking world. This dream might manifest not through a dream figure, but through irritation at a colleague, a friend, a stranger on the train, anyone who unconsciously embodies the energy of that scarred mother. This is not to say that others are never truly irritating or even abusive, but our task is not to make simplistic moral judgments. The psyche is far too intricate for that. The task is to ask, why this person, and why now? Why does this particular trait ignite such fire in me? And even more, what would happen if I allowed myself to carry that trait for a moment, if I stopped resisting it and instead tried it on like a mask? You may be shocked by the answer, for within each irritation lies a gift, a seed of transformation, but only if you are courageous enough to step beyond your righteousness and look into the shadowed mirror, the shadow. Ah, yes, the great archetype of the disowned self. You must know the shadow is not evil. It is not the devil as religion has taught you. It is simply the part of you that your ego has deemed unacceptable. And every human has a different shadow. For what is light to one is darkness to another. To the arrogant, humility is shadow. To the submissive, power is shadow. To the rational, emotion is shadow. And to the spiritual, anger is shadow. The people who irritate you often live freely in their shadow, which is to say, they embody what you have repressed. Their boldness disturbs your humility. Their chaos disrupts your order. Their sensuality threatens your restraint. But why? Because you have not yet made peace with that aspect in yourself. What you fight in others is often what you envy. Not consciously, of course, but envy is a strange emotion. It wears many masks. It may look like disgust, a judgment, superiority. But underneath, it is longing, a longing to be whole, a longing to be free. And so you must understand, wholeness does not come from perfection, but from integration. You are not meant to be pure, but complete. To be human is to be a paradox, light and dark, noble and petty, divine and animal. The ancients knew this. In their myths, the hero must descend before he rises. He must face the dragon, the underworld, the trickster, and often the dragon is not an enemy, but the gatekeeper guarding treasure. That treasure is your true self, but you must be willing to face your irritation, not as a nuisance, but as a portal. You must ask, What in me is being touched? What memory, what fear, what dream have I buried? And then you must listen not with the mind, but with the soul. Listen to your irritation as if it were a teacher, a prophet in disguise. It will tell you stories of your past, of your unmet needs, of the masks you've worn to survive. You may discover that the person who irritates you reminds you of your sibling who overshadowed you, or your father who never approved, or even the part of yourself that you exiled long ago because it was too wild, too loud, too real. The ego does not want this work. It prefers blame. Blame keeps you innocent, but blame also keeps you bound. The path of individuation, the path to becoming who you truly are, requires you to turn inward, not to wallow, but to reclaim, to retrieve the parts of yourself you lost in childhood, in relationships, in trauma. And every irritation is a map, a psychic breadcrumb, a clue from the unconscious saying, come this way. There's something here for you. Do not run from it. Follow it. Follow it into the forest of yourself, into the caves where your monsters live. You will find they are not monsters at all. Only memories with teeth, emotions with claws. But if you face them, they become allies, archetypes, powers. You will begin to see that the person who irritates you is not your enemy, but your guide. They are the sacred irritant, the grit that makes the pearl the antagonist, that sharpens your character, the twin soul who volunteered at some level to trigger your growth. It's not always kind, it is not always fair, but it is always meaningful. And the next time you feel that familiar burn in your chest, that sigh, that eye roll, that urge to escape, pause, ask yourself, who is this really about? And then go inward, trace the thread, let the image arise, sit with it, speak to it. You may be surprised at what it says. Often it will not speak in words, but in images, a memory, a sensation, a dream. Let it come. Let it move through you. And in that moment, you are doing the work of healing not by resisting irritation, but by redeeming its message. This is not a one-time task. It is a lifelong practice. For the unconscious is not a land to be conquered, but a lover to be courted. And it reveals itself slowly in fragments, through encounters, through irritations, through dreams. The people who irritate you are your teachers, not because they are wise, but because they reflect your unfinished symphony. And so I invite you not to avoid them, not to confront them, but to turn them inward. Use them, study them. Let them crack you open. Let them humble you. Let them show you where you are still clinging to an image of yourself that no longer serves. You are not here to be untouched. You are here to be transformed. And irritation is one of the alchemical flames in which transformation begins. You see, we have misunderstood the purpose of discomfort. In our modern minds, obsessed with pleasure, efficiency, and certainty, we treat discomfort as a failure. We pathologize it, medicate it, escape it, but the soul is not seeking comfort. It is seeking wholeness. And wholeness often demands that we feel what we have long avoided. So what then is irritation. It is not merely a psychological inconvenience. It is a signal, an archetypal energy rising from beneath your carefully constructed identity. It is the cry of a child locked in your basement, a forgotten God knocking at the gates of your temple. You say, "This person drives me crazy," but perhaps it is not they who drive you, but your unconscious, whispering, "Here is the wound. The person is only the match. Your wound is the fuel." And so, to rage against them is to miss the real battle, the one happening within. The people who most disturb you are rarely random. They are psychic magnets, pulling to the surface what you have refused to feel. They are actors in the great drama of your individuation. And they appear precisely when you are ready, not consciously ready, but archetypally ripe. The psyche knows its timing better than your ego ever will. I have observed this countless times in the analytic room. A man, cold and logical, married for 20 years, suddenly meets a woman who is wild, unpredictable, emotional, and he is both drawn and repulsed. He cannot stop thinking about her. She irritates him. She awakens a part of him he left behind in childhood, his spontaneity, his tears, his chaos, not because she is better, but because she carries the key to a room he locked away. Or a woman, soft and empathic, is constantly triggered by her boss, assertive, sharp, unfeeling. She calls him narcissistic. Perhaps he is, but more importantly, he reflects to her the fire she has swallowed all her life. He reminds her of the voice she was told to silence. And so irritation becomes a paradox. It points to the very quality you need in order to become whole. You may ask, but what if they truly are wrong? What if their behavior is unacceptable? Yes, of course. There are those whose actions are harmful. I do not suggest that you must love them or tolerate abuse. But even then, even in their cruelty, they may awaken a part of your story that still aches for light. The psyche does not care for blame. It cares for integration. It wants to be seen, not justified. And so even your enemies, especially your enemies, offer a mirror not to them, but to you. And that is the uncomfortable truth. You cannot escape yourself. No matter how far you run, the psyche will place before you 1,000 versions of your unloved parts, each one wearing a new face, a new name, until you stop, turn inward, and say, "I see you. What have you come to teach me?" Do you understand? This is the sacred art of shadow work. And shadow work is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is an initiation, a descent. The ancient alchemists knew this. They called it the nigredo, the blackening, the stage of rot and confrontation, where the ego cracks and the real journey begins. In this stage, you will feel raw, defensive, angry, because your self-image will be challenged. You may begin to see that the part of you which you thought was so kind was actually passive, that your humility was a mask for fear, that your compassion was sometimes control. These are not accusations, they are revelations. And they will hurt, but only what is false in you will be wounded. the rest will rise stronger. I want to say something that may trouble you. Not all of your irritation is irrational. Some of it is sacred. Some of it is the soul saying, no more. When you have spent years abandoning yourself to please others, irritation is the first spark of your return. It is the roar of the lion awakening in your belly, not to destroy, but to protect, to reclaim boundaries that were never allowed to exist. But again, the difference lies in awareness. Are you irritated because they reflect a trait you need to reclaim? Or are you irritated because they are violating your soul's truth? The unconscious always knows, but you must develop the ear to hear it. And that, my friend, take practice. The dream is a good place to begin. Your dreams are not nonsense. They are mythic messages, dramas staged by your unconscious. And often the people in your dreams who irritate you are versions of yourself, disguised, symbolic, but unmistakably yours. I remember one woman who dreamed of an arrogant queen who insulted her in front of others. She awoke, furious. She's so full of herself. She said, how dare she humiliate me, huh? And yet, after much reflection, she admitted, I've always wanted to feel that free, that bold, but I was raised to stay small. The queen then was not an enemy, but an invitation. Her irritation was envy in disguise, and her envy was a roadmap to the self. She had never permitted herself to become. What would happen if you let your irritation guide you rather than control you? If you sat with it like an old friend and asked, what are you showing me? If you stopped seeing the other as enemy and instead as emissary, yes, the people who irritate you are not just projections, they are initiators. They activate what lies dormant in you. And the work of the soul is to allow this activation without falling into unconscious reaction. Do not lash out. Do not collapse. Instead, witness, feel, reflect. This is the psychic path to freedom, because in the end, you are not seeking to get rid of your irritation. You are seeking to understand it, to transmute it, to use it as the philosopher's stone uses base metal, transforming the ordinary into the sacred. Irritation is not the problem. Unawareness is. We must become curious, not judgmental, curious about the faces we attract and the dynamics we repeat, the patterns that emerge like sacred geometry in our relationships. Why do you keep meeting people who interrupt you? Why do narcissists seem to find you? Why does chaos follow you into every workplace? These are not curses. They are clues, and when you take them seriously, you begin to reclaim your psychic power. You stop being a victim of your triggers and start becoming the alchemist of your responses. You see, every person you meet is a constellation of archetypes. They carry energies you need not to copy, but to understand. And often, the ones who provoke you the most are holding a medicine. You've refused to drink. This is the archetypal dance, the psychological tango between you and the world. And it does not end until you do your work, until you retrieve your shadow, until you welcome back your lost fire, until the person who once disturbed you becomes irrelevant, not because they changed, but because you did. You became whole. That is the gift hidden inside your irritation. And the price of that gift is your willingness to feel, to descend, to face your illusion. You will be tempted to go back to blaming. It is easier, it is faster, it keeps the ego intact. But you did not come here for easy. You came here for transformation. And transformation, my dear listener, begins with the question, what is this feeling trying to teach me about myself? Not about them, about you. The path to liberation is not paved with avoidance, but with awareness. So tonight, I invite you to remember this. Every person who irritates you is your mirror, not of who you are, but of who you are not yet willing to see. There is something primal, almost ancient, about the way irritation curls up from within us. It is never only a surface reaction. No, it rises like smoke from a fire you thought had long gone cold. But this is the mistake of the conscious mind, believing that what is out of sight is gone, that the forgotten stays buried. Yet the unconscious is a patient keeper of all that you wish to ignore. And it waits not to punish, but to awaken. The people who irritate you are often the ones who disturb the image you have constructed of yourself. You have worked so hard to be calm, to be noble, to be above it all. But then someone arrives loud, selfish, demanding, and they shake the frame. They do not fit into your story. But that discomfort is the whisper of truth. Your story is incomplete. The persona, your social mask, is delicate. It wants applause, it wants approval, it wants peace at any cost. And so it will reject what doesn't fit, but the shadow waits behind it. The shadow watches. It sees how you flinch at arrogance because you were never allowed to express your own desires. It sees how you bristle at manipulation because you were taught never to ask for what you need. It sees how you judge vanity because your own longing to be seen was called weakness. The shadow remembers everything. And when someone walks into your life and embodies what you rejected, the shadow stirs. It says, look here, this is you. This too is yours. But you are not ready to hear it. So you project, you condemn, you resist, and still the pattern returns different faces. Same feeling. This is not coincidence. It is psychic choreography. It is a great wheel of integration turning again, because the soul does not want you to remain half alive. It wants you whole. It wants you to dance with every part of yourself, not just the ones you like. You must understand this. The goal of life is not perfection, but individuation. And individuation means becoming fully yourself, not the self your parents wanted, or your culture demanded, or your trauma shaped, but the self that was buried beneath it all, the real you. And the real you includes contradiction. It includes rage and tenderness. It includes ambition and humility. It includes selfishness and generosity. It includes light, and it includes shadow. Those who irritate you are often simply more honest in their dysfunction. They are living out what you repress, and while their behavior may be flawed, that the emotion they awaken is an arrow pointing inward. That arrow must be followed, not blindly, but with reverence. Because if you trace irritation all the way down, you will find not hate, but grief. Grief for the self. You couldn't be grief for the parts of you that were punished, silenced, irritate. And beneath that grief, you will find power, not the power to dominate, but the power to integrate. You will begin to see how your irritation is a doorway, and if you open it, if you walk through, you will find a piece of yourself waiting on the other side. I once worked with a man, proud, successful, admired, but he was constantly irritated by his teenage son, who was rebellious, lazy, and emotional. He has no discipline. The man would say he wastes his time in fantasy. But as we explored deeper, it became clear the man had once been a dreamer himself. As a boy, he painted, he wrote poetry. He felt everything deeply, but his father beat it out of him, taught him that emotions were weakness and success was duty. And so the son's behavior was not just annoying, it was threatening. It reawakened the boy. The man had buried, and that boy, still alive inside him, wanted to return. That irritation then was not about the son. It was about the unlived life. We all have an unlived life. It lingers behind our accomplishments, our roles, our routines. And every so often, someone comes along and reminds us of it. Not gently, but with friction, with provocation. And our first impulse is to push it away. But what if instead we paused? What if we allowed the discomfort to be a message? You must learn to listen not with judgment, but with symbolic sight, to see the figures in your life not merely as people, but as archetypes, the seducer, the tyrant, the fool, the innocent, the outcast, the sorcerer. Each of these may walk into your life at the moment you need them most, not to comfort you, but to challenge the story you've been telling about who you are. And your irritation with them is often a sign that their story, not yours, carries something you lack. What you resist is not always wrong. Sometimes it is your liberation in disguise. But liberation requires descent. It requires you to go down into your unconscious and sit with the parts you left behind, to speak with your anger and ask why it's still burning, to speak with your envy and ask what it still longs for, to speak with your irritation and ask what it's trying to protect. This is not indulgence. This is initiation, because only when you reclaim these parts can you move forward as a full self, a soul no longer divided against itself. And then something miraculous happens. The people who once irritated you begin to lose their power, not because they have changed, but because you have retrieved the energy you gave away. You have integrated the quality they triggered. You have become sovereign within yourself. This is psychic maturity, not the absence of conflict, but the capacity to face it inwardly, to ask again and again, what part of me is trying to speak through this pain? You may not always like the answer, but the soul does not speak in pleasantries. It speaks in truth, and the truth is your healing lies not in comfort, but in confrontation, not with others, but with yourself. That is the path of the mystic, the analyst, the artist, the wounded healer. And if you are here, listening, it is because that path is calling you The question is no longer, why do they irritate me? The question is now, what sacred truth is this irritation awakening in me? And your answer will be the beginning of your return. There is a moment, subtle, quiet, when you stop fighting what disturbs you. When instead of asking, how can I get rid of this feeling, you ask, why have you come? And in that moment, a shift occurs. You step out of reactivity and into relationship with your soul, with your story, with the archetypes that move through your life like unseen actors, waiting for you to recognize them. Irritation then becomes not a curse, but a compass. It points you to the edge of your self-image and asks you to cross it. You begin to see that growth was never meant to be painless. It is, in fact, a kind of death, a death of the false, of the defensive, of the fragmented, and rebirth, not into someone new, but into someone whole. You will still be irritated. This is not a gospel of perfection, but the irritation will no longer dominate you. It will become familiar. Familiar, as an old teacher who visits often, you will say, ah, there you are again. What part of me have I forgotten now? And it will answer sometimes in memory, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in tears. You may find yourself weeping over the very people you once condemned, because suddenly you see the connection, the sacred entanglement, that they were not enemies, but vessels, that their role was not to wound you, though they did, but to reveal what was already wounded. And in that recognition, something ancient softens. The war inside you begins to end, not because you have eliminated your shadow, but because you have befriended it. The rage no longer explodes. It speaks. The jealousy no longer poisons. It reveals. The pain no longer imprisons. It teaches. This is the miracle of inner work, that what once tormented you becomes your ally, that the battlefield becomes a sanctuary, and you no longer fear the other because you no longer fear yourself. This is what I have tried to teach for a lifetime, that the unconscious is not a wilderness to be tamed, but a kingdom to be explored. That your symptoms are not malfunctions, but messages that your irritation is not weakness, but invitation, an invitation into radical self-honesty, into symbolic vision, into the mystic dimension of your life, where every person, every feeling, every tension has meaning. You are not a victim of your emotions. You are their interpreter, their priest. And when you step into that role, you begin to live mystically, not in fantasy, but in depth, in putri, in soul. You become one who walks with symbols, one who dreams while awake. And your life, even in its discomfort, begins to shimmer with purpose. Let me say it once more. The people who irritate you reflect your unhealed wounds, not to shame you, but to return you to the place you left yourself behind. And when you return, when you gather those pieces like sacred bones, you do not become perfect. You become real. You become human. And that, more than anything, is the goal of all psychological and spiritual work, not to transcend your humanity, but to inhabit it fully. So let me leave you not with a command, but with a path, a subtle path, hidden in plain sight. Tonight, as you leave this place, do not rush to fix your irritation, Do not make it an enemy. Instead, become curious. The next time someone provokes you, pause, fail it, name it, and ask, who does this person remind me of? What part of me is being reflected here? What dream might this irritation be echoing? You do not need answers right away. The unconscious does not speak in straight lines. It speaks in spirals, in images, in repetition. But if you listen, really listen, you will begin to hear it. Not with your ears, but with your heart. And in that listening, you will begin the great work, not of becoming better, but of becoming whole. This is your task. This is your gift. And this is the sacred wound, the one that irritates, burns, calls, and ultimately heals. You were never meant to outrun your shadows. You were meant to turn and greet them, to say, so it was you all along. I've missed you. And then to walk not away, but within and there, in the hidden garden of your own soul. You will meet again and again the figures who provoke you most, not to fight them, but to recognize them, to listen, to weep, to remember, to become